You're watching Race to Power. I'm Shreya Upadhyay. On the show today, a look at all that unfolded in Donald Trump's first Board of Peace meeting. His roll call of all the leaders on stage, his multiple assertions of ending wars. We get you all that happened. And a look at the tensions flaring up between President Macron and Prime Minister Meloni. The French leader has asked Meloni to stay in her lane. More details coming up in just a bit. The inaugural session of American President Donald Trump's Board of Peace has concluded, and it was marked by frequent self-praise, abrupt shifts in topics, and digs at the leaders who were gathered there. He moved from touting his role in ending wars to taking attendance of global leaders. In fact, he even asked them to raise their hands or stand, and joked when he fumbled their names. During his speech, Trump touted his endorsements of foreign leaders as well.
Whereas President Millet, I endorsed him. I'm not supposed to be endorsing people, but I endorse, when I like people, I've had a very good record of endorsing candidates within the United States. But now I endorse foreign leaders, including Viktor Orban, who's here, and others. And I endorse this gentleman, Millet. He was a little behind in the polls. He ended up winning in a landslide. I just endorsed the Prime Minister of Japan. She was in a tight race, but was probably going to win, and she won in the largest number in the history of Japan. So she likes me a lot.
Amid all of this, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif had an awkward moment. Here's what happened. Donald Trump asked him to rise while boasting about his so-called mediation skills, and in response, Shehbaz Sharif lauded the American president as a man of peace and savior of South Asia.
Your timely and very effective intervention to achieve ceasefire between India and Pakistan potentially averted loss of tens of millions of people. You have truly proved to be a man of peace. And let me say, Mr. President, you are truly savior of South Asia.
Later, speaking with supporters in Georgia, Donald Trump mocked French President Emmanuel Macron as well, as he recounted an earlier conversation with him. The US president claimed that he had pressured Macron into raising drug prices by threatening a 100% tariff on French wine and champagne. If he did not comply, Trump said that Macron eventually agreed, portraying the encounter as a show of his influence over foreign leaders.
I said, Emmanuel, you're going to have to lift your price by double or triple. No way. I will not do that, Donald. Why would I do that? I would be out of business. I said, no, you're going to do it 100%. No, I will not do that. I will not do that. Yes, you will. You're going to do it. And he said, no. I said, here's the story. If you don't do it, I'm going to put a 100% tariff on all of the wine and champagne that you sell into the United States. And you know what he said? I will do it. I will gladly do it.
The American president has long employed a good cop, bad cop approach in foreign relations, moving between flattery and pressure, depending upon his own objectives. And joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Adel Nazarian, who is a senior media fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy, joining us, of course, to decode what exactly Donald Trump's speech meant. Adel, good evening. Welcome to WION. I want to start by asking you not what Donald Trump did there on stage while he roll-called global leaders, but my question is, why weren't these global leaders stopping him? Why weren't they saying that, look, you can't do that?
Great to be on with you. Good morning from Washington, D.C. Honestly, yes, he can. He's President Donald Trump, and that was very entertaining. But that's just it, right? That's who he's been from the start, and that's why he's off the cuff, nature, playful but informal, sometimes bordering mockery. That's just who he is, and he's not going to change. That's why this presidency is so characterized by a unique set of, values and characters, but that's not the way it's going to be going forward. Obviously, there's going to be a change in presidency 2028, all that stuff. What I think is interesting here, though, is as much as the media likes to chastise him and focus more on his, the jokes and the mockery, whatever it may be, President Trump, I think, is achieving his goal here. He's distracting everyone in the media with his playful words and the jokes that he's cutting, and actually behind the scenes getting things done tangibly. I mean, this is a historic meeting. I know every nation wasn't present. Some, the majority of nations actually. If you notice, I'm sure you did. You're wonderful at what you do. That the majority of these nations actually have a Muslim majority population, and they are very much decision makers and key stakeholders in Gaza and what happens there in terms of negotiating the relations there. So he's distracting everyone in the media intentionally, probably, and making tangible things happen towards his vision for trustfully rebuilding Gaza. And you see the nations that were present: Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Bahrain, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Kosovo, Kuwait, Morocco, Mongolia, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the UAE. So El Salvador as well, Hungary, but just to name a few. But this is, long story short is, if he's able to, with the support of the nations that were present and pledge their support, actually rebuild Gaza. It's been decimated. And so the Gazan people obviously deserve a better way of living. So if he can do that, and they can therefore have a good way of having peace, why not?
Adele, it's easy to call out the media on putting and hyping up Donald Trump's statements, but we didn't ask for it. He's just giving it to us on a platter.
I know.
But besides that, Adele, the point is that this entire board of peace that has been focusing on the reconstruction of Gaza has one contentious point, and that is the disarmament of Hamas. Despite the fact that global leaders have come together and they've pledged money as well as troops on ground, that cannot happen without the disarmament of Hamas, and we don't have any surety, any agreement from their side at the moment, despite the fact that Donald Trump, the US president, has been saying that they will do so.
So you're absolutely correct. And the just to address it, and I'm a media person myself. I was a journalist for 20 years. So it's amazing headlines. So you have to thank him for it. Regarding the disarmament of Hamas, absolutely, without a doubt, there will be no peace in Gaza and a lot of the region, frankly, if Hamas is not disarmed. So there's no guarantee yet, but I am hopeful that there will be, actions taken to ensure that Hamas does disarm itself there. And if it doesn't do so, I am certain that there will be consequences. I mean, if you look at the number of nations that are there that have, a stake, they're stakeholders literally in that part of the world, in the Middle East, between Gaza and Israel. I think there can be pressure placed not only from America, but also from the allied nations to ensure that Hamas does disarm itself, because it really doesn't benefit anyone when they are active and carrying out what they're doing. It doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, so let's wait and watch when that happens and if that happens. But I'll leave it there. Adele, thanks very much for joining us on WION and sharing your perspective. All right, shifting our focus now, Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has said that her country is facing a challenging security scenario since the end of World War II. And she put most of the blame on an increasingly assertive China. Now, this jibe, remember, is the latest in the escalating spat between Tokyo and Beijing since Takaichi's rise to power. Sanae Takaichi was addressing the parliament in the wake of her landslide election win. She said that she aims to revise Japan's 3 key defense policy documents to prepare the island nation for prolonged conflict. And her chief concern is China.
The free, open and stable international order to which we have long been accustomed is now being significantly shaken. Amid these circumstances, Japan is facing the most severe and complex security environment since the end of the war. China is strengthening its attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force or coercion in the East China Sea and the South China Sea, while also expanding and intensifying its military activities in areas surrounding our country.
Takaichi drew Beijing's ire late last year by suggesting that Japan could aid Taiwan militarily if China were to attack the self-governed island. Since that statement, there has been an escalating diplomatic row between the two nations. Takaichi doesn't seem to be backing down. Before Beijing's threats, she said that Tokyo will keep responding calmly and appropriately from the standpoint of Japan's national interests. However, Takaichi also said that she wants to loosen Japan's self-imposed ban on the export of lethal weapons.
Regarding the transfer of defense equipment, we will accelerate deliberations aimed at reviewing the so-called 5 categories under the 3 principles of transfer of defense equipment and technology. This will contribute to strengthening the deterrence and response capabilities of our allies and like-minded countries, and will also lead to reinforcing Japan's defense production base, as well as its civilian technological foundation.
While she said that the exports would help Japan's allies, she highlighted that it would also reinforce the country's own defense industry. And Takaichi added that her government wanted to focus on growth areas, including AI, chips and shipbuilding. The Japanese Prime Minister's rhetoric has riled up China, which has recently been accusing Tokyo of trying to revive Japanese militarism. Takaichi's latest push for defense seems likely to anger China further. Is Field Marshal Asim Munir the de facto or the real ruler of Pakistan? That question was posed to Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif during an interview with French media company France 24. It was the interviewer's final question to Khwaja Asif. The journalist said that Asim Munir's role was something that a lot of people had been wondering about, especially considering that the Field Marshal has been making frequent visits and interactions with American President Donald Trump. Khwaja Asif responded by saying that Asim Munir's current prominence is part of an arrangement. He acknowledged that the Pakistani armed forces, sometimes colloquially referred to as the establishment, were rendering their help with the elected government. Asif called it a hybrid arrangement, with both the military and civilian government working in tandem. But he insisted that this did not mean that Pakistan was under military rule. Asif pointed to Pakistan's past experiences with military rule. He only spoke of the 1950s and 60s. But remember, Pakistan's trysts with military rule continued well beyond that. And even when not directly in charge, the establishment has long been accused of pulling the strings behind the scenes. Khwaja Asif acknowledged that a lot of people think that the military is in control once again, but he insisted that that was not the case. And finally, the interviewer pointedly asked him whether Field Marshal Asim Munir was his boss. Pakistan's defense minister replied that Munir was not his boss and that he reported to the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Well, we're slipping into a short break. When we come back, a look at Bangladesh's first election lab, which has been inaugurated to study the electoral procedure scientifically.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Supreme Court of India has slammed the culture of states giving out freebies, especially ahead of elections. A bench led by Chief Justice Suryakant questioned this tendency while hearing a petition filed by the Tamil Nadu Power Distribution Company. This company has reportedly proposed providing free electricity to all consumers irrespective of their financial status. It is challenging a rule that requires that the tariffs charged by distribution companies must reflect the cost of electricity. During the hearing, Chief Justice Suryakant questioned the culture that is being developed in India on account of freebies. He was in fact particularly focused on freebies being distributed to people who can afford to pay, and also on the tendency of governments to distribute freebies on the eve of elections. Tamil Nadu, remember, is among the states that will be going to polls later this year. But the top court said that it wasn't just talking about Tamil Nadu. It said that it also had a number of matters from other states pending before it. The Supreme Court said that it wants states to focus on using their tax revenues for hospital, roads and colleges. According to the court, those investments would be true nation building. The CJI added that instead of freebies, states should be focused on creating avenues for employment. He was particularly concerned about direct cash transfers to people's accounts. The Chief Justice compared that to people getting everything on a platter, and that he said that it would prevent people from learning how to work hard. Bangladesh has launched a first of its kind election lab in the country. It was inaugurated at the Shah Jalal University of Science and Technology, or SUST, in the city of Sylhet. Now, this new lab aims to conduct scientific studies into elections, voting behavior and electoral processes. The organizers say that the aim is to enrich Bangladesh's democratic processes. Before establishing the lab, the university, faculty and students were already conducting research on the 12th February election. They surveyed electoral constituencies and analyzed the affidavits of candidates. After the polls took place, the university also evaluated constituency-based results. The decision to open a dedicated election lab was taken on the 1st of February. The Vice-Chancellor of SUST claimed that this year's election was comparatively better than the previous ones in Bangladesh. He said this despite one of the major political parties, which is the Awami League, having been banned. However, during Sheikh Hasina's tenure, the opposition had boycotted several elections as well. So a major party missing from the polls is a common feature of Bangladeshi elections. French President Emmanuel Macron and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni have hit a rough patch. Macron has called on Meloni to stop commenting on France's internal affairs after the Italian Prime Minister expressed shock at the fatal beating of a far-right activist in France. Meloni said the killing of 23-year-old activist was a wound for all of Europe. Macron was quick to shoot back. While attending the AI summit in New Delhi, Macron said that there was no place in France for movements that adopt and legitimize violence, and asked everyone to stay in their own lane.
As for the other political comments I'm seeing, I'm always struck by the fact that people who are nationalists, who don't want anyone bothering them at home, are always the first to comment on what's happening elsewhere. If everyone just stayed in their own yard, the flock would look after itself.
On her part, the Italian Prime Minister commented that the French President had misinterpreted her comments. In an interview, she clarified that expressing solidarity with the French people on a matter that clearly concerns everyone is not interference. The activist, Quentin Derenic, passed away from head injuries after being attacked by at least 6 people last week. This was on the sidelines of a far-right protest at a university in the city of Lyon. According to a source close to the investigation, most of the 11 suspects detained are from far-left movements. The killing has fueled political tensions in France ahead of municipal elections in March and the 2027 presidential race. France's far-right National Rally Party is seen as a favorite in the elections. Shifting our focus now, Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, has signed the historic amnesty law.
From the standpoint of an interim Chavista president, you have to know how to ask for forgiveness, and you also have to know how to receive forgiveness, and that is the process that is opened with this amnesty law.
Rodriguez is said to have pushed for the legislation under pressure from Washington. Several human rights organizations say the law falls short of offering relief for hundreds of political prisoners in the country. The approved law provides amnesty for involvement in political protests and violent actions which took place during a brief coup in 2002 and demonstrations or elections in certain months between 2004 and 2025. People convicted of military rebellion in 2019 are excluded. The law, remember, removes international arrest warrants for those granted amnesty. Meanwhile, tribunals must decide on amnesty requests within 15 days. The law does not detail the exact crimes which would be eligible for amnesty. However, a previous draft laid out several crimes, including investigation and instigation of illegal activity, resistance to authorities, rebellion, and treason. The amnesty law enactment comes as thousands of Venezuelans have been jailed in recent years over plots, real or imagined, to overthrow the government of Nicolás Maduro. Meanwhile, some fear that the law could be used by the government to pardon its own and selectively deny freedom to real prisoners of conscience.
A la presidenta encargada de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela.
And with that, it's a wrap on Race to Power. But as always, we'll keep getting you news and updates from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us at the moment. Bye-bye.
And welcome to a brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of southern states.
By blending the special stories, the breaking alerts, and the culture developments as well.
As Wuthering Heights makes waves across the world, we look at the many screen adaptations of Emily Bronte's only novel. Know all about the celebrities who have rare organism species named after them. And meet Grammy-winning band Tenari Ben. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
On Inside South Asia this week, the new Prime Minister of Bangladesh takes charge. What to expect from Tariq Rahman, we decode. chronic unemployment forces Nepalese youth to seek job opportunities abroad. Can March 5 polls lead to new avenues? And we take you to Pakistan, where Gen Z is having a new kind of nightlife. All this and much more on Inside South Asia.
As soon as my cousin stepped outside the house, he was hit by a bullet.
India was the cynosure of all eyes this week with the AI Impact Summit. Not content just to be part of the conversation around AI, India wanted to lead the narrative. We'll bring you all the key takeaways and the highlights from the summit. From there, we'll move to real-world impact and look at how AI-powered cameras are keeping an eye on swimmers in Australia. We'll also look at these very, very special ecosystems that are being built in multiple cities around India for developing world models of AI. And finally, we'll see why China is betting big on robotics. That and more in this episode of Check It Out.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Beyond the noise and rhetoric, no election, no ballot issue too small. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. More than just headlines. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION. World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190